evening. I am delighted to have Dan Marsden here from Probate Auction. If anybody's watching this, you'll see from behind him. But Dan, hello and welcome. And do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Again, yeah, Dan. I've been in the property industry for probably about, so I'm missing my age here, probably about 30 years almost. And been involved with the auctions business really since this particular one, Probate Auction, was started up in April last year. So we're still a very young business, but I think it's fair to say we've been quite loud, really, the last sort of 12, 18 months. The co-founders, Nick and Russell, have opened their wallets really to get us to the events and to give us the opportunity to talk to as many private client lawyers and charity legacy managers as possible. So we're reviewing all of that, but it's been a lot of talking, a lot of meetings, all with the aim just to change the narrative around auctions because they've never had a great reputation. So it's yeah, I think from 1st of May to Christmas, I had a count up because I'm sad like that. I'd had 237 meetings. So
Wow.
yeah, and it's really continued the same sort of pace this year. So we've been full bore, high energy, really just talking to people. There's no sales pitch. It's just been talking to people about the real risk of the residential market, the open market. Testing the market is a phrase I absolutely loathe. The residential market's not in great shape at the moment, despite what agents might tell you. And I've got loads of data, Heledd. I could talk data all day long, but I've got some amazing data. So there's no sales pitch. What we're trying to do is just to talk about a change of strategy for lawyers primarily, who tend to be the ones that, are calling the shots with the estates around auctions, just with what we're talking about, 4 out of 10 probate properties, which are the unmodernised ones.
Yep.
The rest, we don't care about. Stick them in the window, roll the dice, do your best. But with unmodernised properties, in a very, very short nutshell, for unmodernised properties, so anything your classic homes under the hammer, doer-upper, through to your hoarded, firebombed, pipes exploded, proper mess, and everything in between, 99 times out of 100, we get more money for those than any estate agent. And
Okay.
that's the bit we're trying to change. It's the education piece without sounding patronizing. When we say education piece, we're just trying to change that perception of auctions.
Okay. And why do you think, sort of why do you think there is that sort of
I,
split between
I,
auctions and.
Yeah, I think to be honest, it's kind of they've kind of done it to themselves. I think the perception of old is that it's really about cartels of cash buyers and closed shop, and all of these things are true. And I think despite the fact they haven't really helped the narrative, really, Homes Under the Hammer and programs like that actually made auctions a bit more accessible to people. So the bit that we struggle with, and this is the bit that most people believe, is that you can go to an auction, buy a bargain, spend 10 grand, and spin it out the other side for a fortune.
Yeah.
Now, that's not reality. And even though now probably 40% of our buyers are not professionals, so they're people that, we do have first time buyers who are lucky enough to have either very, very flexible finance or parents or somebody funding them. But 60% of our buyers are still professionals. But it's had to clean its act up a lot, the auction room, because I think it's very much more open, because it's accessible, because large institutions like the NHS, the Met Police, some of these public funds use auctions as an exit. They've had to clean their act up. So there are still lots of those people in the market. We still do come across traders and investors, and but primarily it's a very, very quick, very certain, very safe place to buy. It's changed a lot over even the last 10 years.
Interesting. Yeah, and I have had the pleasure of sitting in an auction once and being on the sales side. It's quite exciting.
It is, and I think we should. I think we should start property by auction, but it's not. It's not the way it is. I know some countries they do. I know Australia, they love it. They stand outside the house and they auction it. I mean, it is. I say I've been selling property for a long time, and I think it's fair to say I've never had so much fun doing it. It's amazing. We stand here in this room, this backdrop here. So the rostrum is here. This is where Russell stands, and with his gavel. And there's usually two or three of us at the back of the room here with on the phone taking telephone bids.
Okay.
Uh, but we've also now got a timed auction, so it is literally eBay for property, but with an immediate
Mm.
exchange of contracts. So that's made things even more flexible. So it is changing, and we are trying to lead the way. We're looking at a lot of AI solutions at the moment for the business over the next 12 months. So lots to look forward to there. But it's changed a lot. I mean, auctions has changed a lot, and we've had to change with. I say we've had to change. We've tried to force a bit of change over the last 12 months or so. That's been really difficult, just in terms of that, sort of looking at these slightly differently. So I'm doing that by presenting very good data to lawyers. And the simple question is, why do you think it is that investors use auctions to exit unmodernised properties that they take from estate agents? And
And
then people,
is it generally that sort of, it's a rundown house, or it's a problem house, or can it be anything?
yeah, I mean, look, if people generally think that unless it's absolutely ruined, it's no good for auction. But to be honest, even your doer upper, so new kitchen, new bathroom, flooring, paint job is can do very well at auction. And and that's the thing, we talk to people all day long about what makes a good auction property, but we see a lot of retirement properties. That's a completely different subject. There's a national scandal with retirement properties. But there are, a lot of properties on the market at the moment. And, currently, I think as of last week, there were 758,000 homes on the market right now. And the week before that, they only managed to sell 20,000 of those. There's a very slow drip. And if you think that only 5% of probate properties are making it to auction at the moment, we think that should be more like 40% because unmodernised houses, like I say, always do better at auction. Um, so it's a challenge. We've still got lots and lots of work to do. And we I see charities all the time. I see private client teams all the time. I literally take pictures with me and say these properties. So from the really appalling houses that really are in a terrible state to your simple house that just needs modernizing, there is value there for an investor. There is value there for somebody who wants to buy that and either live in it or rent it out. But it's no hard and fast rule. And to be honest, Heledd, we look at everything and we say yes to as many properties as we say no to as many properties as we say yes to. Somebody sends me a house and says, Dan, we can't sell this. I say, look, there's nothing wrong with it. It was modernized 2 years ago. It's in good condition. The problem you have there is the expectation around price. So the agent, and this is the bit, the agent has priced it way too high to get the instruction. And if you think that is a problem in itself. I've spoken a lot about this, about agents overpricing. In 2024, they reduced prices on 62% of what they had because they price high. And once they've got the instruction, they'll reduce the price because of the market, because of whatever reason. But it's no good. And especially when you're dealing with estates and charities and people who are relying on that money. Um, it's just it's difficult to say this without sounding awful, but it's not okay. And I think, for all of us we're all here um, to do the best by our clients, and agents will say they're there to do that too. We don't think they're doing that by overpricing, overvaluing, and it's a real problem. And we've that hasn't changed really. You think that at the moment, probably 1 in 7 properties are being reduced in price almost immediately. That looked like 4 in 7 last year, and that's climbing because there is a huge volume of stock on the market at the moment, a huge volume of stock. And people say, well, the market's great. There's loads of properties on sale. It's not. It's a buyer's market. It's made things even more difficult for people. So when that house is also unmodernised, you've got a real problem. And it's a problem that really, when people are in a situation where they've already dealing with grief and loss, and they might be in a situation where they've never had to deal with this stuff before. We're here really not just to sell houses. We're here for quite a few people, quite a few teams as consultants, property consultants, almost like a property arm. Certainly for some of the bigger charities, I'm here for advice. It's
Yeah, and having done many years conveyancing for my sins, it's an astonishing system whereby there's so much. And I always say to my clients, like, look, this is not like buying a Mars bar. It really isn't. This is we need to be sure you can get from the road to your actually front door. So there's work to be done. Not
Yeah.
just handing over the cash. But I think it's quite esoteric, isn't it? That sort of thing. And I suppose, I guess, with the auction point, there's an auction pack, and
Yeah.
that's got to be a really useful aspect to the whole thing.
It's
Rather,
it it's simple, and I think the thing that certainly appeals to me. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I spent most of my life in new homes, so I like quick exchanges. It's never but the truth is, it's got worse. It was quicker to buy a house 10 years ago, and there were lots of reasons for that. I'm sure, volume, complexity, local authorities, searches, problems, all these things, finance, conservative surveyors. It doesn't matter what it is. The point is they all add up to a very high fall through rate. And conveyancers. Before I was here, I worked for a conveyancing firm. I headed up new business there, and conveyancers will say they're the busiest people in the world. But now I started working with private client teams. The probate lawyers, the wills and probate lawyers, will say they're the busiest people in the world because the volume's there, and there's the client piece, and it's really difficult. But the truth of it is, at the moment, from start to finish, estate agents have just, for the first time, hit the 200-day mark, which is horrendous. The UK average is just hit 200 days. So it's very, very stressful. And that's if you make it across the line at all. In 2024, and this hasn't changed actually. I checked the stats last week. It's a coin flip whether or not you make it across the line. I think they completed on 53% of their deals last year, which
okay.
most people aren't aware of. So in terms of risk, and I know you lawyers don't like risk. I
Like
mean, not
risk.
especially when I talk about the risks,
Uh,
we talk about some of the data. I mean, we were at the Law Society Private Client Conference where you and I met not that long ago
yeah.
again. And when you just present data, and it is very good data that we have, it's terrifying. It's testing the market suddenly becomes very, very, very risky for the client. Testing the market generally means slapping it on with an agent at an unachievable asking price, rowing back 3 weeks later and praying that somebody buys it. Because at the moment, with 758,000 homes on the market, and last week only 20,000 of those went under offer, it's a very painful drip. So for us, of course, I would say this because I work for an auction house. Certainly for unmodernised houses, we sell 3 times faster. You're start to finish done in 7 to 9 weeks. It doesn't cost the estate anything, so there's no fees. Buyer pays all the fees. And 96% of everything we've offered in the last 12 months, we've sold. So it's a bit of a no-brainer when you present it like that. But auctions are still scary for lots of lawyers and lots of charities who don't understand this. And there's lots of firms out there, there's lots of charities. So we've just had to deliver this message, but we are trying to scale that message as quickly as possible. But it's tricky because nobody likes change, especially the legal industry don't like change.
What you mean?
Some of you are revolutionaries, Heledd. I mean, you're the exception to the rule, but most lawyers do not like change. They
Look, I'm
don't.
still working off the Wills Act 1837. That's fine, don't get too fancy now. No, I think it is interesting, and I think so having sort of done probate and and talking to families and that, and I think that properties have huge emotional attachment for a lot of people. So there's a lot of time where it's like, I'm desperate to keep it in the family, or completely the flip side. It's like get rid of it, quick, cash it in, get it done. There doesn't seem to be anything really in between.
No.
And and I guess that sort of attachment to bricks and mortar, and how then maybe going about sort of selling it in that probate space, in that estate administration space, does it differ then, I suppose, with your client base? You sort of mentioned some charities earlier on,
Mm.
as opposed to individuals. Are you seeing a difference in approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, it's very, very easy to overgeneralize, but I think where the charities are very commercially minded because they desperately need that money in. Like, I mean, there's, with the private client teams, not so much. I guess the focus is on the client and maximizing value of the asset and all that sort of stuff, and that all works too. But with the charities, they're very commercially minded. My experience so far, I've probably spoken to, I don't know, well over 200 charities. And we deal with the big ones, the well-known ones. We give a lot of advice to people. Pretty much every day, I probably speak to 5 or 6 charities about properties that we may well never take on. They seem a lot more open to it than the lawyers, only because I guess there's a difference in priority for the charities. I know the sector has been it's really struggling at the moment. The legacy sector is it's in deep trouble. I think with staff retention, funding, grants. It's really tough. And I guess if they don't get the money in, they can't carry on with that sort of valuable work. You're seeing centres closed down across the country for animal charities. You've got hospices closing down. There's all sorts of things happening. So I guess the real life impact of those funds not coming in feels a bit more real. But they definitely seem a lot more open to it. And I was with, I've been recently with a couple of the larger cancer charities. Last week I went to see the team. I think at the time we had, I've got another one next week, but talking to 2025 legacy managers. And what's really lovely is when they start talking to you about cases they've got right now, you see the properties and you think, my goodness, it's just perfect. And what started out, what people might say, well, that's a bit of an outlier, Dan. You've got this property and you've sold it well ahead of where we thought it was going to land. They're not outliers. I mean, every auction this happens. I'll give you one, and this is a bit of an outlier, but I'll give you just how extreme this can get. We had a property for charity beneficiaries. This was in June. We had a house that had been on the market, probably on and off for about 18 months. It was valued by the local agents at 625. It was a mess. We had pipes burst inside. Beautiful looking house. But the pipes had burst inside. It was absolutely gutted. It needed a complete refurb or a knockover. And I say it'd been on the market for about 18 months, worth about 625 according to the local agents. They'd had an offer on it of 550 in 2023, just sat there. I talked to a major charity. It was a children's charity who had it on. In fact, I can say it was Great Ormond Street, and we're working cancer research, one of the other beneficiaries, and a couple of others. And we put it in our auction in June. We had 140 people through the front doors. We had 62 registered buyers, and for a house that was worth 625, we sold that house for £901,000.
Wow.
So amazing for the charities, a lovely story, an outlier only in so much as that sort of gap was huge. And, but it's part of the process. And we've had loads where we're probably averaging 20 to 30% ahead of where people might think we're going to end up. And certainly in terms of agent valuation on some houses, we are ending up a clear 20% ahead of where the agents put it. And so we have to show people. There's no good me just saying. And I do remember when we went to the Probies last year, when we launched the Probate Industry Awards, I remember going to that award ceremony and talking to lawyers saying, we've just launched this auction house today. They were like, that's nice.
Exciting.
And now you fast forward and we've done quite a few auctions now. We've sold well over 200 properties. And as I said to you just before we came on here, for me especially, we've done a toss up and we've sold 6.2 million. We've raised 6.2 million pounds for charities over the last 3 months alone, which is 1.2 million ahead of their expectations. And that brings me great joy
Yeah.
because I know that 6.2 million pounds is needed and it's great and I love doing it. And I've been rebadged Mr. Charity in the office and I love it. And I've got lots of plans for August to go and see some of these charities. And there's a very human aspect, I think. When I was working in property, you don't see it so much. But since meeting people like yourself, private client teams, you hear all the stories. It's much more people led. I know lawyers talk about, oh, we bought this house, we sold this house, we've got a family attached, whatever. But I just think, I don't know, that the probate lawyers I've met over the last 18 months have been very, very people oriented. There are lots of stories. They really do care. And I think, I'm not saying conveyancers don't care before I get lambasted by
I was going to
people.
say, you're in big trouble otherwise.
I do. I've definitely found, really, really lovely people seem to work in private client, especially sort of probate, wills and probate. It's a really nice part of this work. So I'm working in auctions. That's huge fun. And I get to talk to charities and probate lawyers every day. And they're all really nice people. They seem to be. So actually coming to work now it's really lovely.
I
And
think
of course,
it is humanity. I mean, you are dealing with people.
yeah,
As I keep on explaining to people, I say, we are dealing with people, people's mums, people's dads, all the emotion that goes with it. I mean, there's the law is obviously what we're here for, but that kind of goes without saying. It's that ability to deal with the people behind it
yes.
is really important. Now, I'm quite interested to know, is there any sort of like geographical sort of differentiation between auctions and not auctions? Is it easier to auction something like really obscure in the middle of nowhere, or actually
No.
cities?
No is the short answer. Sorry, I cut you off with my no. No, it's not.
No.
We work UK wide. And look, I think it's fair to say sometimes if you've got a property in the middle of nowhere, it can be quite tricky. I think for anybody. I think with a local agent, sometimes that will do a bit better if it's literally in the middle of nowhere. But we've sold property all across the country. And it's the condition that makes it appealing. And to be honest, as much as we sell lots of doer-uppers to people, generally speaking, the worse they are, the better they do, the more interest we get. Because the thing is, Helen, people look at this through different optics. And some people you might walk into a house and say, well, 10 grand, I can turn this around. In fact, I watched a program over the weekend. I don't think it was Homes Under the Hammer, something similar. And a guy bought this property at auction, and then it was quite recent. Said, "Well, I think I can turn this property around for 5 to 7,500." I'm just like, "What? No, just ridiculous." The roof was knackered, the bathroom, the kitchen, everything needed doing, and surprise, surprise, Bob spent more money than he thought. But look, ultimately, we're not here, and we don't tell all our buyers this, but there's no such thing as a bargain at auction. We're here to squeeze every penny out for our sellers. So as much as we're here to advise, we'll talk to buyers, we'll do whatever else. With auctions, with the auction pack, it is very much buyer beware. And the shocking stat on the auction packs is that about 40% of people don't even read them, which is mad. But they don't. They don't read the auction packs. They
Just brings me out a cold sweat. It just makes me nervous.
sweat, yeah. But they don't read them. And
Oh,
so we're here to squeeze every penny out, whether it's for lay executors for the estate or for charities. Russell is an amazing auctioneer, and he will sometimes start at 10,000 increments, go to fives, go to twos, go to ones, and go to £500 increments sometimes. But he will squeeze every single drop of value out of that house or flat. And that's what this is about. And I think the thing that we talk about is that open environment, that open competitive environment. I mean, we've all paid too much for something on eBay. And it's one of those. Like, oh, I shouldn't have paid that. It's a Friday night, someone gives you a glass of wine and you're on eBay. It's dangerous.
yeah,
Like,
I know. Click, 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 click,
like, I was going to pay 10 quid. I paid £22.
I know.
And I put a post out this morning on LinkedIn, which of course LinkedIn have squashed because it mentions WhatsApp, Google, and Facebook.
Well, that learn, yeah.
But the simple point is, WhatsApp in 2014, WhatsApp was worth about 1.2 billion dollars. And there was a bit of open competition between Google and Facebook just went mad and paid 19 billion for WhatsApp. Now it's that competitive bidding situation that was very open that we see at auction where people pay too much in inverted commas. Too much is relative, and we had a house in Dudley last year that was worth, according to local agents and the surveyor, it was worth 225 grand. The family that bought it also owned other properties in the area with family, worth 225. Apparently, they paid 305,000 for it. So what it's worth is very, very different. It depends who the buyer is, what their reasons for purchase, but it's very subjective. And because it happens in this very open, very competitive environment, people go a bit mad. And they're just
Yeah,
like,
like auction frenzy.
the lady that bought the house for 900 grand, she absolutely acknowledges she's paid too much for it, but they're going to live in it forever. So she's like, it's not too much for us. We wanted that house, really.
It's what it's worth to you, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know.
And the market
Um,
will decide, and that's it. The market will always decide what a house is worth. It doesn't matter what I think, what you think, what anybody else thinks. On the day, it's worth what somebody's prepared to pay for it. We've all heard that saying. And it is very relative, and that's where we get these surprises. Every now and then, we get this mad surprise, and that was another one, the house in Dudley. But it just keeps happening. So you think these are one-offs, but they're just not. It's somebody sees something, and we think, well, maybe they've seen an angle nobody else has seen, but maybe they've just paid too much for it. Who
yeah,
knows?
and I guess it works the other way around because I've sort of always had conversations with people and they go, well, why is the house not selling? I think, probably because it's perhaps overpriced. Oh, it's outrageous. And I go, well, do you want, what do you want? Do you want to sell it at that? Do you want to hang on and wait to sell it at that price because somebody will come along, or do you want rid? Because then you've got all the, I think you've always got the maintenance, the costs, and the upkeep, and that doesn't stop.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's what people forget. I mean, I mentioned I'm loath to talk about them really, but retirement flats are a national scandal. And we had a lady in tears phone our office a few weeks ago. She had a flat in Margate that her mum had left to her, and they'd already racked up 15 grand's worth of service charge arrears. There was balloon payments for council tax. There was staircasing, shared ownership stuff involved. I mean, it was just a nightmare. And she just said, I just want to get rid of it, Dan. The problem is with retirement flats, especially the mega expensive ones, um, they're probably worth 50% of what you think they're worth. And when you've got another 20 flats on for sale on Rightmove in the same block, it's just the nightmare for people. And all the time you're sort of deliberating over what to do with these properties. Exactly what you say. You're hemorrhaging. The estate is just literally hemorrhaging money every week, every month. It goes unsold. So we sell retirement properties every auction, but we have to have a really candid conversation around value because we can't. There is a niche market for these. There is a market for retirement, but it's very niche and it is very price driven. And it's not an easy conversation to have when somebody's paid 450 grand for a flashy flat on a really lovely, retirement scheme. And 2 years later, they think it's worth 450, 400, whatever. And you think, no, you can almost half it and knock off 50 grand and we joke about that, but there are some flats that we see that it's just outrageous what they paid for them. And I don't know who comes up.
Yeah. It's interesting though on that one, isn't it? Because I have to, confession time. I was at one of these places the other day, and I was meeting somebody for lunch, and I was like, this is great. I've had there's all these people having like fish and chips and prosecco at lunchtime, and I was going, I'm actually
I'd live here.
sign me up. And I can see, we digress slightly, but I can see the appeal in that. But I think it's perhaps it's that understanding piece, isn't it? That sort of a property is worth what a property is worth and what the
It's,
market says
it's
it's worth, rather than what you perceive it to be.
Exactly. And I think when people are living there, it's fine. Like you say, they get the fish and chips, they get the Prosecco, they get to go for a swim, they get to meet they make friends there. It's all good. That's all great while that's happening. But unfortunately, when people pass away and they're left, it's the exit that's the problem. And so and that's the reality that is left for families. So, I mean, I guess that's why, you do what you do so well is trying to make those people feel a bit less daunted about this whole process when that happens, because it's scary. It's like, what do I do with this? I've never done this before. And now I'm an executor of I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Where do
Yeah,
I start?
I said again, this is my day job. I wouldn't do it in my spare time, as I proudly told my parents the other day. And they went, "Do you not want to like be our executor?" I went, "No, I really don't." I said, "I know what's involved. I'd rather just hand it over to somebody else and
No,
somebody
thank
eventually
you.
send me a check." And they went, "Oh, all right." I'm like, "No, seriously, not a problem."
Exactly. Exactly.
But no, I mean, joking aside, it is like, it is onerous. It is a huge responsibility. And I do a lot of stuff sort of with people during their lifetime as well. So people have lost capacity and people managing the
Yeah,
finances of somebody. Like, you are stepping into the shoes of somebody else. You're running not only your own life, but you're running a whole other life in parallel. I'm going, I don't know why you've got time for that or
no,
inclination. So, I think it is interesting to see actually a lot of what we need is that wealth transfer.
yeah,
A
and
lot of the time it's that encashment, it's that moving, it's that ability to keep that money moving through the system.
I think that's the point. And I guess at that point, when somebody needs that, it's about taking the right advice from the right people. And I think in your case, it's obvious, lifetime planning, and when it finally does happen, you've got people coming to you saying
Yeah.
that, Helen, I need help. With us, we just give people what we think is the right advice given that property, and we let them make their own decisions. But for us, the data is overwhelming, and all we can do is draw people's attention to it. Say, look, this to the private client teams, this is the risk of putting a house on the market today. This is what it actually looks like. Forget what the agents have told you. This is what it looks like. And because genuinely we want to be able to sell this unmodernised house or flat because we know we'll get more money, this is what it looks like for us. And we just look that we're dealing with educated people. We let them make their own decisions. There's no hard sales pitch here. But we just, for us, because there were so many law firms out there were so many charities out there, it just takes time. We just have to keep having, I need to have another 600 conversations before the year's out, and I'll have, scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Um, it for us, I mean, joining, partnering. I mean, I'm head of partnerships at Probate Auction, and that word's really key. We partner with a number of organizations. Institute Legacy Management was key for us really with our work with charities. We're big fans of Remember a Charity. We're big fans. We've done some stuff with SME and Ford. We get involved with the events with the private client lawyers, because we just, if we're seen and we can just tell people what we think about the whole thing. There are lots of them, but the penny just drops. They're like, look, okay, I get it. And I think then it's just because people have, some of these people like 500 files on their desk. I thought conveyancers, with 100, I thought that was horrendous, right?
Yeah.
You talk to charities or you talk to some of the private client teams, it's got like 3, 4, 500 files on their desk. Where do you start? So, aside from volunteering to sit and going through all of their properties, which I will do happily, it's really difficult because people are already really busy. So it's a tough one. It's a big ask, but we're making really great progress. And I think we haven't gone in with a huge sales pitch. We've made a lot of friends over the last 12, 18 months. People trust us. We're not a bad bunch, willing to travel. I know you and I are on Zoom today, but I will be coming to Bristol soon, so we'll have to have a coffee at your.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's look, it's great. We love what we do. We love the stories. We've got lots of stories. I love collecting these stories. We've got lots of them now, and we're just trying to make a difference in
It
an
is, isn't it?
industry.
It's about people, isn't it? At the end of the day, and essentially, obviously, you're working in bricks and mortar, we're working in law, and there's all things come together. But actually, there's people at the heart of it, aren't there? And I think
Absolutely.
that's whether. And again, I think your charity point is really interesting. And as a trustee of a charity, unrestricted cash, the nicest thing to receive ever. So, yes, please, if you are sending money to charities, don't restrict it. That would be my other sort of,
Yeah.
thing to say, because otherwise it's like, oh yeah, no, you can only have this if you have this specific thing. Like, oh, I need some money for here. So, but yeah, it is fascinating. It is a really interesting space, because it is one facet of that sort of piece, isn't it? But actually, it can unlock so much more, can't it? So,
Yeah.
what's your one thing you want people to take away from this?
I would like anybody who's dealing with property as part of their role, whether they're a legacy manager or a private client lawyer, to have a quick look at their files. If it's unmodernised, and let's start with the stuff that's stuck on the market. If you've got something that's unmodernised, take a view, right? And it's stuck on the market, let's say it's been on the market for more than 60 days, give me a shout. I'll look at it same day. We'll give you some numbers. Worst case, you've got some numbers for your file. Best case, we'll get you a massive result for your clients.
Excellent stuff. Well, that's really, really helpful. And thank you so much for joining me. It's been a
Absolute
delight.
pleasure. Yeah, great
And
to see you.
thank you very much.
Great day.